Hello everyone, my name is Zheen. I am a 5th stage medical student at the University of Suleimani's College of Medicine, and I'm really excited to present our work to you today as part of the Beyond Sciences Conference 2018, and I'd like to thank the Beyond Sciences Initiative to giving us this opportunity. So our research was conducted last year. It's on the effects of classroom discussion on students' retention of knowledge. It was done with the help of my colleagues Halo Mahmoud, Muhammad Tayyib, Rahel Umar, and Ranj Reboir, and it was done under the supervision of our Assistant Professor of Family and Community Medicine, Dr. Bushra Muhammad Ali. So let's start. We'll start with the introduction. Through our literature review for our research, we discovered that the current methods of teaching and learning are largely inadequate. They have been and they are passive learning methods, and there are much better methods to utilize nowadays. And these are called active learning methods. These include things like self-testing, spaced repetition, meaning you recall the information over longer periods of time as time goes on. Elaborative interrogation, which is asking yourself why something is or how it happens, and a few others like summarization, interleaving, which is studying different subjects between interleaving them with each other, and discussion, which is the topic of our research, and retrieval practice, simply recalling something. Active learning methods have first been described by an English scholar called Revens, and these can be used to solve this inadequacy. So a lot of researches have been conducted measuring active learning methods in students studying, but very few have been done on teaching methods utilizing active learning methods. The prevailing thought has been that students learn while listening to lectures, reading the material themselves, and things like highlighting and such, passive learning methods. And tests in teaching centers have been only thought of as a method of assessment, not a method of learning, and it is a way of learning, as we have discovered lately. A scholar named Gates measured the effects of retrieval practice around a century ago. What he did was he measured these effects by having school children recite the vocabulary that they learned and measuring their efficiency at this. He learned that building recitation into the curriculum meant better retention of the words that the student learned. Okay. The role of classroom discussions in comprehension and learning has been the focus of investigations since the early 1960s. So this is where the actual research on this specific topic started. What you need to know, a term you need to know here is called generative models of learning. So this is a theoretical model of learning that says that the process of generating a novel product is thought to lead to improved retention of information. Meaning that actively generating a response after learning something, actively generating a response by answering a question or something leads to better retention because you connected with previous knowledge and it's anchored to that previous knowledge. Namely, more elaborate pathways are built between the new knowledge and knowledge you have previously in your mind. The discussion, which is the topic of our discussion, is one of the generative models of learning. Okay, so why we conducted this research? There are a few reasons why we did this. The first one was that the research on this topic of discussion is lacking, especially in our region in Kurdistan. Another one is that the type of teaching that is widely used currently sets the stage for passive learning. And by implementing active learning methods, which we describe, which one of them is discussion that we describe here, we would vastly improve the students' retention of knowledge. So this conducting this type of research really has a lot of significance in learning and teaching. Another one was that this research that we conducted was the first experimental study to be done in our College of Medicine ever. So it was a really exciting endeavor to work on. Okay. The objectives of our research included measuring the students' satisfaction of the discussion. So students, the experimental group that underwent discussion, we measured their satisfaction level to detect any association between gender or residence and the satisfaction of the students. And this yielded some interesting findings. And the main objective was to measure the effect of classroom discussion on the students' retention of the knowledge that they learned in the lecture. Okay, so how we did the study, or the methodology. The study's design was a controlled experiment, so it was an experimental design. It was done on students of the 4th stage of the College of Medicine in University of Suleimani, and it was done in 2 hours. That's the time that the lecture took with our assessments and discussion. It was done on the April 30th of 2017. How we sampled the participants: we had 155 participants, and we randomly assigned these participants to 2 classes, one being the control group and the other being the experimental group. Okay. I'm going to show you the picture next. So how we divided the participant was that we had 12 groups of 6. So there were 12 groups of 6 students and 1 group of 7 students. These were discussion peers. So after they underwent the lecture, they had a discussion with each other. The format was as the following. In the control group, we had the students in a 30-minute long lecture, and then we had them fill out the assessment sheet that we had prepared. Now I'm going to show you the picture next. In the experimental group, we had the students undergo a 30-minute lecture, same thing as before, but after that they underwent a 10-minute long discussion, and then they filled out the assessment sheet. Okay. The assessment sheet contained 5 multiple choice questions, and the discussion was comprised of 2 questions. These were prepared by the lecturers and were reviewed by us so that we adjusted them for the study's needs. And it was done in a really seamless manner, and we didn't really cause any inconvenience for the students. They had a medicine lecture at that time, and we just tinkered with the lecture instead of introducing a whole new thing, so that we wouldn't cause any inconvenience. Okay, so you can see the pictures here. You can see this is the assessment sheet that we used. You can see the gender and the residence of the students, and these are the 5 multiple choice questions. And down below we measure the level of satisfaction of the students in a simple 5-point scale, from very dissatisfied to very satisfied. And something interesting you see here is that the title is different from the actual study title, and I'll explain this next. You can see the picture of the classroom here. So we labeled the desks with the number of the students, and we hang the number and the list of names and numbers outside the classroom so they can know, so they could know where to sit. You can see that there are 3 rows of students, and the discussion groups are like this. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 students here, another 6 in front of them, another 6 in front of them, and so on. Okay, continuing on the methodology, to eliminate confounders, the students were told that the aim was to measure the effective teaching methods on retention. So they thought that we were measuring effects of teaching methods, not discussion, so that it wouldn't affect the study's results. And they were also told that they would be presenting the result of their discussion after they discussed. They would be presenting the results, so that we did this so that they would have a reward for their work. Okay. And they were told these things 2 days prior to the actual study, and an instructional video was put 1 day before, so that they knew what was going to happen. And we also debriefed the students after we were finished with the study on what we did and why we used these deceptive methods. Okay. Regarding ethical considerations, we took permissions from the lecturer to tinker with the lecture for the purpose of conducting this study, and so all permissions were taken and granted. Okay, now to the exciting part, the results of our study. In this chart, you can see this is the measure of satisfaction level for the discussion among the experimental groups. You can see that mainly the students were either very satisfied at 26.8% or slightly satisfied with the discussion at 34%. And this is a promising result because it means that if you implement this method in the curriculum, students would find it, they would enjoy the experience. In another chart, we show the association between the students' gender and their degree of satisfaction. We can see that the male students who were very satisfied comprised 15.9%, and the females comprised 34.4%. So the females in general were more satisfied with the discussion experience than the males, and you can see the p-value here. It's a significant association. We took every p-value less than 0.05 to be a significant association, and we conjectured two factors that led to this phenomenon. One is that most of the students are females in the class and generally in our college, so there is more chance of being with other females in your discussion group. And another one is that we live in a conservative society where opposite gender interactions are largely frowned upon. So females being with other females in the discussion group would be more comfortable for them, and therefore they enjoyed the discussion more than the males. And this is the main result of our experiment, measuring the effects of classroom discussion on the retention of the students' knowledge of the lecture that they were just given. We can see that there was a significant association between the experimental group and the control group, p-value 0.001. Experimental group was 63.54%. This was the result that they obtained in the 5 multiple choice questions. So this is the average result of the experimental group and the average result of the control group. We can see that there is a significant increase in the experimental group who underwent the discussion. Okay, the limitations of our study. Regarding the weaknesses, we did have a shortage of time, or we could have measured more variables and things like that. The lectures that we measured, it was only a single lecture, so if we could have measured more lectures, we could have had a more real life result. And long-term retention was not measured, which is an important factor. And the study was not double-blinded, although we took every measure to make sure that the lecturers didn't behave differently in the 2 classes. Okay. But the strengths of our study included things like it was the first experimental study to be done in our College of Medicine, so we did a good job at it. It has a potential to be utilized for better curriculum design that includes active teaching and learning methods. It was a very well controlled study, so we accounted for all of the variables that we could think about, and it had an excellent implementation of the plans that we had put before starting the study. And lastly, the participants were all debriefed about what we did, and all ethical matters were taken into consideration. So the main conclusions of our research are the following. The majority of the cases were satisfied with the discussion, which is a good finding. Most of the females were satisfied with the discussion, and there was a significant association between the female gender and satisfaction, and we explained why this had happened. A highly significant association was found between performing discussion and retention of the lecture material, which was the main finding of our research. Recommendations, things we recommend to be done are carrying out more experimental research on the topic of classroom discussion and measuring more variables. Things like long-term retention, things like the effective anticipation of discussion, and not just the act of discussion itself. We also recommend similar studies to be carried out in other colleges so that we have a more conclusive result that reflects real life occurrences. And we recommend that the results of this research be implemented to design a better curriculum that includes active teaching methods. And lastly, you can see that these are the references that of things that I might have mentioned in the presentation so that you can look them up yourself. And thank you for bearing with me, and have a good day.